Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Denzel Curry and Kenny Beats Unlocked. This is a short kind of animated film version of the album Unlocked by Denzel Curry and Kenny Beats. Kenny Beats is a producer. Denzel Curry is a rapper. I got into this album actually because of the Rap Critic on his top 10 of the year. I was like, well, I still listen to hip hop, but I used to be much more up on like current trends and what was going on. And I really kind of fell in love with So Incredible, and then checked out the whole album, which I really liked. And I knew that the Wacky Races kind of sort of video from So Incredible. And then I found out there was actually, they did the entire album as sort of a short, like about 23-minute animated film, which I thought was really cool. And as I like animation and hip hop and stuff, I liked listening to the album enough on Spotify. I actually bought it on vinyl, so that's why I have that here. And yeah, I've listened to this album a lot. It's a short album. It's not very long. Obviously, it's 23 minutes. It's pretty quick. But as someone who's really liked Paul's Boutique and the Dust Brothers production and things like that, that's what Kenny Beats kind of reminds me of. They even do a sample of Shake Hands with Danger, which was a Riff Tracks kind of favorite, or at least I saw Riff Tracks do it. It was really funny. So it checks off a lot of boxes for me. I like Denzel Curry as an MC. I mean, I don't know like his stuff that is not this as much, but I liked his performance at least on this. Like his quick references, how he's like referencing other hip hop things, and So Incredible, like the cliche of like, I don't write rhymes, I write checks, which I don't know who came up with that first. I know Puffy did it. He even goes like a little DMX in certain tracks and things like that. So I quite like what they're doing with this. I also like hip hop when it gets a little weirder and funkier and stranger, which I think is kind of mellow in some places. It's references. It'll like suddenly cut to like found audio basically in the middle of his rhymes like quite frequently, while also being very poppy. It's like perfect. I grew up like listening to Bex Odelay a lot, for example. Like I said, I like the Dust Brothers clearly a lot. This kind of reminded me of that, and I think sometimes hip hop is very like literal in terms of like, here's the beat, here's the MC and stuff. And I liked how Denzel Curry very much is a contemporary MC, but like mixing it up in this kind of like very kind of crazier style and things like that. I also like the remix album as well, but not as much as this. The movie, which is really what I'm reviewing, but I thought I'd say a little bit about it. I also think this is like one of the best current hip hop albums I've listened to in a little bit. I mean, I guess it's almost an EP, but I think it's an album. I don't know. So, in the short film, which is on YouTube, you can watch it. There'll be a link in the description. Denzel Curry, Kenny Beats is in the studio, and Denzel Curry shows up and says their album has been leaked, and they have to go into the internet using these weird things to attach their heads to like put them into the internet, and then once they're in the internet, they just basically become cartoons, and each one is a different kind of style. The first one's kind of like a CG kind of almost like Gorillas sort of thing. The other is based on like Japanese horror manga. They have a Scooby-Doo one, like I said before. They have a Wacky Races one. Those two are the only two that kind of share the same character design. They have one that's like older, kind of like Fleischer Brothers animation. They have one that's stop motion, sort of in a Robot Chicken-y sort of way. And they have the last one, Cosmic, which I've heard Denzel Curry said he wanted it to be like Cowboy Bebop. It feels like sort of modern like CG kind of anime, but in like I think a cool kind of way. Oh, and in a paper cutout kind of style, not like South Park, but like in a weirder, stranger way. I like the idea of this because it kind of opens up to doing different designs for each of the tracks. The tracks are kind of like similar but different in a way. It does feel like kind of like an amalgamation of like oversaturation of pop culture and music and cult movies and animation and things like that. And it shows like, I don't know, I think it would be one thing to do like Yellow Submarine or like what most people do, or like Wave Twisters or something, and like, which I guess this is sort of similar to, that each kind of track has its own sort of section. But Wave Twisters which is a great hip hop animated film, which nobody really talks about. It's like really cult kind of thing. This is very much in that cult way because it plays with the idea that each one, it's like an anthology film basically, and it's like goes along with listening to a good album, because each song should stand out on its own while meshing together, and the framework works really well with it. I like the idea that they kind of end it in a cool way, and that you get these so many different styles of animation, which were, even though this is directed by Jack Biggert, I think, and Christian Sutton, there was a different lead animator on each short, basically, I believe, which you can kind of show. This definitely plays with, gives more of a focus to each of the different animation teams for each of them, because they're able to do different designs and have to do different designs for each one. One thing I like about this kind of style, it does feel like very, pop culture obsessive kind of thing, which is maybe why I like it. But I think it also like plays with the kind of post-modernity of hip-hop, and I think this one does as well in terms of the postmodern idea of animation, going through different styles and liking through different styles. There's no rhyme or reason. Like, they go to the Fleischer Brothers thing after they went to Wacky Races, and then they go like insanely modern at the end. So there's no sense or rhyme or reason to it, but I sort of like that even more because it keeps you visually on your toes. You don't really get bored with this at all for the 23 minutes it's going on. You can't really get bored with this album because it won't let you get bored, but I think that film just accentuates that with the animation style, because you can tell they're keeping it alive and keeping it fresh while switching out these things over and over again. It's pretty radical in terms of doing that, which I think is really cool. You know, this could have just been like, obviously these are all cut up and sent out as separate music videos as well. You can watch them as separate, which is why I got confused. Didn't know this was a short film, to be honest with you. I was like, oh, they've just done a couple animated film, which I've heard other people say as well, which is interesting. But as a whole, it really works within like what this album does, and I think it's kind of a really cool idea. I wish there was more hip-hop animation in general. I like how it takes on their two personas, and it's like an album of both of them, and they're just going through these various cartoons, going through this world, and it does feel like, it almost feels like how old you hear about old Looney Tunes or Tom and Jerry or something, and there'd be a director, but they let each of the animators go. I don't know how the production was or how they made these sort of things, but it sort of feels like that kind of creative ingenuity going throughout it. As someone who, you know, obviously I helped work on hip-hop cartoons and stuff like that, someone who loves the combination of these two things, this is probably one of the great hip-hop cartoons I've seen recently. I just really like it. I love that album. As someone who got to grow up in the 90s like hip-hop world, this feels very like 90s, but in the way that wasn't like necessarily like the most socially acceptable. This feels like the weirder, stinkier, stoner, blacklight room kind of hip-hop, which I quite enjoyed. And I think this shows like someone who like is watching old Cartoon Network with the sound off, playing old Beastie Boys or playing Atlians, which this album cover sort of reminds me of in a way. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. It reminds me a lot of graffiti art I see around Brooklyn and stuff. But I think this is one of the great hip-hop animated films. Just because it's so open to experimenting and doing different things. And I think one of the things that, as much as everyone's interpretation of hip hop and rap is just like a simple kind of like idea of this guy raps and he spits and like all this stuff, there's so much more surrealism and experimentation going on with it. And this whole project is supposedly, I don't know them, either of their discographies that well, Kenny Beats or Denzel Curry, but this is an experimental project. This is a different sort of project, and artistically, I think this matches up with what they were trying to achieve as a music artist. They did so through animation, which I've never really seen that done as perfectly as it does here. So I really like this. It was a really fun 23 minutes. I would actually love to see it like with an audience. I just watched on my computer on YouTube. I don't know if they ever got to do a premiere. This came out in like pre-pandemic 2020, which feels like its own year almost, but I think it just like really gets into what I've always loved about hip hop, that experimentation, that strangeness, that never standing still, always moving kind of attitude that goes throughout that music. And I think it funnels into the animation in such a beautiful way. This is like kind of something I almost can't deny and almost really want to watch again, and also really like that black and white hoodie thing. I kind of want to get one of those. This was just an awesome treat when you're already into an album and you find out, especially for me, that there's an animated movie going along with it. Was just an amazing. I'm so glad I found this album, and I'm so glad I found this movie. And I think if you get into this album, you have to see this movie. But if you like hip hop animation, or even animation in general, I think this is something that got slept on by most people I know who like animation, and have an interesting animated hip hop statement like this is just, I just think one of the coolest things I think that we got from 2020 in general. So if you've seen Denzel Curry and Kenny Beats Unlocked and you would like to talk about it or listen to the album, comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.